welcome to Daily English Stories. Every story hides a world. Some inspire, some haunt, some stay forever. Chapter 1. Humble Beginnings. Jimmy Donaldson grew up in a quiet town in North Carolina. To the outside world, he looked like an ordinary boy, but inside him lived an unshakable curiosity and a dream far bigger than his surroundings. While most kids his age were busy with sports or hanging out after school, Jimmy found himself drawn to a small corner of his room, where his old laptop sat, humming with life. The screen flickered, the internet connection was slow, and his camera wasn't anything special, but to Jimmy, it was a window into endless possibilities. At just 13 years old, he uploaded his first video on YouTube. It wasn't polished, it wasn't extraordinary. In fact, almost nobody watched it, but Jimmy wasn't discouraged. He stayed up late into the night, editing with free software, teaching himself how to cut clips, add music, and experiment with ideas. His mother would often peek into his room, worried that her son wasn't sleeping enough, but Jimmy's eyes always carried the same spark, a quiet determination to create something meaningful. The early days were not easy. His videos rarely crossed even a few dozen views, and sometimes, after hours of editing, he would see just one lonely like. The lack of recognition could have broken anyone's spirit, but Jimmy took it differently. To him, every failed upload was not a failure at all. It was a lesson, a step closer to figuring out what worked and what didn't. Money was another challenge. Jimmy didn't come from wealth. He didn't have the latest equipment or a studio filled with lights and cameras. He had a simple setup, a small camera, a chair, and an old laptop that sometimes overheated and shut down in the middle of editing. But in those limitations, he learned something invaluable. How to make the most out of what little he had. His imagination became his biggest tool. Day after day, he studied YouTube itself like a textbook. He observed how titles, thumbnails, and ideas shaped a video's success. He watched other creators and tried to understand why some videos exploded with millions of views, while others remained unseen. Slowly, he began to experiment, sometimes with gaming videos, sometimes with random ideas, and sometimes with challenges that pushed his own limits. Still, recognition was slow. Friends didn't really understand why he spent so much time making videos that no one watched. Even family members questioned if it was worth it. Yet Jimmy kept going. Deep inside, he carried a belief that if he just kept showing up, one day the world would notice. There were moments of doubt, moments where exhaustion weighed heavily on him. Nights blurred into mornings, and he often woke up with tired eyes and unfinished homework. But whenever he thought of giving up, he would remind himself why he started. Not for fame, not for money, but for the sheer love of creating. YouTube wasn't just a hobby for him. It was a calling, a part of who he was. In those humble beginnings, a seed was planted. A boy with no audience, no resources, and no certainty kept working, guided only by passion and persistence. He didn't know it then, but each late-night upload, each failed experiment, and each quiet moment of resilience was shaping him into the creator the world would one day call MrBeast. The world hadn't noticed him yet, but Jimmy Donaldson had already begun his journey, a journey that would soon transform not just his life, but millions of others around the globe. Chapter 2. The Rise of Creativity. As the years passed, Jimmy's determination only grew stronger. What began as random experiments slowly turned into bold and ambitious ideas. He no longer wanted to just upload another video. He wanted to create something people had never seen before. His restless imagination began to dream up challenges so unusual that they couldn't help but capture attention. One day, he set up his camera, pressed record, and began counting. 1, 2, 3. It seemed silly at first, but Jimmy pushed forward. He counted not for minutes or hours, but for days, until his voice grew hoarse and his eyes burned with exhaustion. By the time he reached 100,000, he had done something no one else had dared to attempt. People were fascinated. The video spread across the internet, and for the first time, Jimmy felt the world beginning to notice. Encouraged, he kept pushing the limits. He read every word in the dictionary, watched paint dry, and explored ideas that seemed both absurd and strangely mesmerizing. His creativity had no boundaries, and slowly, subscribers began to gather around him. They saw something different in this young man. Not just another YouTuber chasing trends, but someone willing to go beyond what anyone thought was possible. But the real turning point came when Jimmy decided to give, even when he had little to give. With the small amounts of money he earned from his early videos, he started surprising strangers. Sometimes it was a few dollars, sometimes a little more. He would hand it over with a shy smile, recording their reactions. The joy on their faces was unlike anything else he had ever captured on camera. For Jimmy, it was more than content. It was a feeling, a spark of happiness that came not from views or numbers, but from making someone else's life a little brighter. And the audience felt it too. They weren't just watching challenges or experiments anymore. They were witnessing kindness, raw and unfiltered, unfolding in real time. The pattern continued. Whatever he earned, he gave back. If he made $100, he spent it giving away 100. If he made 1,000, he found a way to share it with strangers, friends, or even his own subscribers. People were astonished. Who would take every hard-earned dollar and pour it back into others? But Jimmy knew something they didn't. Generosity was not loss. It was gain. Each act of giving fueled his passion, his creativity, and his growing audience. Soon, his videos weren't just challenges. They were events. He began organizing stunts with friends, setting up bigger giveaways, and finding ways to create content that was both entertaining and impactful. The more outrageous the idea, the more people watched. The more people watched, the more resources Jimmy had to create even bigger moments of generosity. This cycle of creativity feeding kindness and kindness fueling creativity became the heartbeat of his channel. Viewers felt connected, not just entertained. They laughed at his crazy ideas, admired his persistence, and were deeply moved by his willingness to put others before himself. By now, the boy from North Carolina who once uploaded videos to an empty audience was becoming a name people recognized. The late nights, the sleepless editing sessions, and the countless failures were finally paying off. Jimmy was no longer just chasing a dream. He was building a movement, and yet, even in the glow of his growing success, he stayed grounded. To him, it wasn't about fame or wealth. It was about the belief that every video had the power to change a life, to spark a smile, or to inspire kindness in someone else. The rise of creativity had carried him far. But what lay ahead was even greater. A chance not just to entertain millions, but to change the world itself. Chapter 3. Changing the World. What started as a boy's passion for making unusual YouTube videos had now transformed into something much greater. Jimmy Donaldson, known to millions as MrBeast, was no longer just a creator sitting behind a camera. He had become a force of generosity, a symbol of how one person's creativity, persistence, and kindness could ripple across the entire world. His projects grew larger with every passing year, What once began with giving away a few dollars had turned into handing out cars, houses, and even an island. Entire families were lifted out of hardship. Students received scholarships, and strangers walked away with life-changing surprises, all because of a video idea that started in Jimmy's mind. But behind the entertainment, there was always a deeper purpose. He wanted to prove that kindness could be just as powerful, just as captivating as any stunt or spectacle. With his growing audience and resources, Jimmy realized he could take on challenges that reached beyond individuals, challenges that touched the planet itself. In 2019, he launched Team Trees, a movement with a bold promise: plant 20 million trees across the globe. At first, the goal seemed impossible. 20 million was not just a number. It was a dream on a scale few had ever dared to imagine. But Jimmy believed. He rallied his community, inspired fellow creators, and invited the world to join in. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from every corner of the globe, from school children giving their allowance to billionaires writing massive checks. And within weeks, the goal was met. 20 million trees were funded, 20 million seeds of hope planted for future generations. Jimmy had proven that the internet could be more than noise and distraction. It could be a tool for unity, for action, for real change, but he didn't stop there. In 2021, he turned his eyes to another urgent issue: the oceans. With Team Seas, Jimmy and his collaborators set a goal just as ambitious: remove 30 million pounds of trash from the world's waters. Once again, the world responded. Volunteers, donors, and organizations came together, driven by the belief that even something as vast as the ocean could be healed if enough people cared. The movement cleaned rivers, beaches, and coastlines, leaving behind not just cleaner waters, but a reminder that collective kindness is stronger than despair. Through these global campaigns, Jimmy's message became clear. Giving is not about what you lose, but about what you create. His channel, once a small collection of experiments, had become a beacon of hope, proof that creativity could meet compassion and spark movements that shape the planet. Yet, for all the massive projects and record-breaking videos, Jimmy never lost sight of the individuals. In every grand gesture was the heart of a simple belief that people mattered, and that even one act of kindness could change the direction of someone's life. His smile when handing over a house key, his laughter as strangers won cars, his quiet words of encouragement to those who had lost hope. These were the real treasures his viewers carried with them. Today, millions look to MrBeast not only for entertainment, but for inspiration. His story is no longer just about a boy who started with an old laptop and a dream. It is about proving that success does not have to be selfish, that compassion can be louder than greed, and that even in a noisy, divided world, kindness still has the power to unite. And as the chapter of his journey continues, one truth shines brightly. MrBeast's legacy is not just in the videos he creates, but in the lives he touches. His story reminds us all that greatness is not measured by what you have, but by what you give.